It's all over the news. Bitcoin has hit its all-time high. So why is it that when my friends ask me if they should start caring, I tell them probably not? First, let me be clear. The only people asking me this question are my non-crypto friends. My crypto friends already have been watching this Bitcoin price surge and already hold strong opinions about it. So why is Bitcoin surging right now anyway? Two principal reasons. One, Bitcoin ETF, and two, Bitcoin halving. Sound like a bunch of gibberish? Let's unpack it. First, Bitcoin ETFs. There's a decades-long saga behind this, so buckle up. ETFs, short for exchange-traded funds, are not unique to Bitcoin. They're investment vehicles like mutual funds or index funds. The fund holds the underlying investment. You hold a share of the fund. You have financial exposure to the asset, whether that's one stock or a pool of company stocks or gold or Bitcoin, without the hassle of actually holding the underlying asset. Now, to be an ETF, you actually need approval from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. For the last decade, different companies have applied for approval and were denied by the SEC. But in 2021, the SEC approved the Bitcoin Futures ETF, and that's when a Bitcoin ETF company sued. Their argument was basically Bitcoin futures ETFs and Bitcoin ETFs are basically the same. So SEC, you can't treat us differently. That's discriminatory. And after a whole lot of litigation, in August of last year, the DC Circuit, one of 12 federal appellate courts, slapped down the SEC in a scathing opinion. For my lawyer friends, the court vacated the SEC for acting arbitrarily and capriciously, therefore violating the Administrative Procedure Act. For my non-lawyer friends, they sent the SEC packing and said, you're not allowed to treat people differently if all you're going to say is, because I told you so. You're an agency and you owe everyone a better explanation than that. So in January of this year, the SEC reluctantly approved all 11 Bitcoin ETFs. Okay, fine. But what does a Bitcoin ETF have to do with spiking demand? Because a lot of institutional investors can now have exposure to Bitcoin. Before the ETF, they couldn't. Institutional investors like pension funds, foundations, endowments, mutual funds, insurance companies, family offices, asset managers all have rules about what they're allowed to invest in. And one of them is that they are regulated investment products. So these institutional investors that wanted to diversify into Bitcoin now can. And arguably, they've been waiting for the last decade to do so. So the demand is acute. But one thing to remember about Bitcoin is that its supply is limited. It's not like government-backed money where the government can print money on demand. The Bitcoin protocol has a fixed supply of Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is released at specific intervals. And those intervals have nothing to do when a particular regulator is going to approve a Bitcoin ETF. And this segues right into the second thing to know about the Bitcoin price surge, the Bitcoin halving. The fixed supply of Bitcoin is a fundamental design feature. It can't be altered. It's what incentivizes a large community of people who don't know each other and have no relationship with each other to keep the protocol running. They operate the protocol, and every once in a while, for their work, the protocol unlocks some Bitcoin for them. Every 4 years, when the Bitcoin protocol reaches a certain number of unlocked Bitcoin, which crypto friends call mined, the amount of effort it takes to unlock more Bitcoin doubles. So for the same computing power, we'll be unlocking half of the Bitcoin as we did before. Those in the industry know that the halving is coming. So some people may be buying up more Bitcoin now because, again, supply and demand. So back to the original question. Is it time for my non-crypto friends to care about Bitcoin? If you're interested in Bitcoin just for its utility, not much has changed in that landscape. It's worth remembering Bitcoin's original design was as a peer-to-peer transaction system. The number of wallets actively using Bitcoin hasn't changed. No surprise. Remember, people buying Bitcoin ETFs aren't holding the actual Bitcoin. They instead hold shares of the 11 ETFs. Now, if you're someone who likes to diversify your investments and you already hold something like gold ETFs, then you're probably all over this already. But if actively diversifying your portfolio isn't one of your top priorities right now, then hopefully you understand a little more to figure out whether or not you should care about this. And finally, if you're genuinely curious about how you can hold Bitcoin yourself, ping me and I'll walk you through it.